Richard Gayton, and this is Mitch McDonald, and we are Halo Love and Country. And if you've been watching our series of podcasts, you can catch them. If you want to subscribe to our channel, you can see some of the old ones have been very cool and interesting. We've been dealing with risks and the risk of being LGBTQ people in the military, the risk of speaking out politically in this current environment. And today we're going to talk about the risk of living and surviving financially in America, but more to the point, and this is my bias, and Mitch always has his point of view and will give his point of view at this, and as we go through this, is how we can heal the divide that's going on in our country. And this is a topic so many people are talking about, unless they're at war, with the other side, and then they're not talking about, coming to peace or unity or anything like that. They're just talking about how to fight better. But today we're going to at least talk about the possibility of having a peaceful resolution to what's going on in our country. And my bias is a lot of that is economic. Doesn't minimize at all the racial aspects of it. Doesn't minimize the xenophobia, immigration aspect of it. But I got started today. We were thinking of a topic. I got started reading Schenk's article in the New York Times about what the Democrats should be doing as far as dealing with the current polarization and trying to unify a coalition of people that might think a little bit differently about different things, but that have a strong message for the country that will attract all people of goodwill, or at least a vast majority. And what I loved about his article is that he suggested that economic populism was the solution to much of the polarization in this country. In other words, having more of a fair deal for people of all races and colors and economic situations, but where middle-class people of lower incomes are really favored in this economy. They're the ones that this economy is for. And I'm kind of making the argument now because they are the vast majority of Americans. The vast majority of Americans are not millionaires and billionaires. But if we look at who got the tax benefits this last time, it was millionaires and billionaires. And who's getting the short end of the stick? Well, I believe it's hitting in November that the ACA tax credits, and I don't even know how that works exactly, but somehow insurance premiums for medical are going to skyrocket. And it's already, in our household, it's already skyrocketed.
Yeah, so that's just going to be, that's literally just as simple as so the ACA basically creates a credit. They're absorbing part of the costs of the medical program by providing the insurance and paying off a certain portion of it. And it looks like on average, it's like 80%. It's a big piece so that they're subsidized and people can afford the insurance. And what it's going to come down to is as people fall off of the insurance, because, once it goes from being 200 to being, 900, 1,000, I could not afford my insurance at 1,000. I don't make that much. So, once you've gotten to a point where you have to ditch your insurance, it comes into two problems. You have people with no insurance who are having to go to the hospital. Hospitals are having to absorb costs. People are coming in for emergency visits for things that they and going for regular care. Again, that was part of the point of the ACA. But then you have the other side of that, which is most people have insurance and never use it, carry it for years, for decades, and have no major use for our health insurance until you're much older. And then you've paid in so much money by then that you're balancing out. You're very well balancing out, unless you've had a catastrophic injury. You're balancing out what you paid in over those years when you were healthy. We're creating a situation now where healthy people are going to have to drop out because they can't afford it. And the people who stay in are going to be the people who are so sick that they can't, they have to do without other things to maintain that $1,000 because they can't afford to pay the $4,000 for their medications. So then you have people who are paying in less and taking out way more. And the only way that, you pass on your costs to your consumer. That's the way we've always done it in this capitalist society. And the insurance companies are going to start lowering benefits and raising rates. And the system will eventually have to eat itself. Or it'll go over to just, a very small number of Americans who actually have insurance. And then, we have to change all the rules we work by about, what is even the function of a hospital if the only people who can use it are the well-heeled, well-moneyed, let's say that. Healed sounds wrong.
Yeah, which feeds into this whole discussion of the gross inequality in our country, because I don't think millionaires and billionaires are having this discussion about what their health insurance premium is going to be. But that's just one of dozens of issues of income inequality. If you just look at where all the growth in wealth has happened, it's happened with the upper 5%. That's where it all went this last 2 decades.
Yeah.
And they're not talking about insurance because they don't care. They're fully handled. So it's like, so why is this important? Well, for instance, my husband's health insurance, Blue Shield, went from $350 to $800, actually $790. I don't know why, except I imagine and that happened October 1st. I imagine that has to do with their anticipation of this all going to happen. But I can pay for it because I make enough money. I'm one of the more privileged folks. I make enough money to pay for it, and it won't bankrupt me or make it hard for us to buy food or make it so I can't pay the rent. It won't do that because I'm one of the privileged. I'm one of the ones that needs to pay more and in our society, just because I have not earned, and this is one of the primary values of our culture, is that we earn our way. I have not earned having special status.
Well, I wouldn't. So I wouldn't say that. I don't know your income. I mean, I know your background, but I don't know how you've leveraged that in terms of money. I don't know how you manage your finances. But I don't think you even are the person we're looking at for who isn't paying enough. Everyone is leveraging the system as best they can. And sadly, the point is the more money you make, the more leverage you have instead of the other way around. The people who have less are given more credit, more excuse, allowed to keep a bit more of their money. There was an article I was reading, and unfortunately I can't cite it, but they were effectively talking about the tax system that Trump knocked aside in his first term would have left people like Elon Musk paying an additional $2 billion every year. And that's not just Elon Musk, that's people like him. So, Elon would have paid $2 billion. the people who are making their money through Apple, through Amazon, the Bezoses of the world, the Bezoses of America anyway. Those guys would have been paying billions in additional funds into the system. And this is part of that same, I've had this argument with people I know who own small businesses. We make the mistake of thinking that when we say all businesses should be paying 80% in taxes, and then they should be cutting that down by making jobs, by spending more on their materials, by spending money on facilities. We give you credit for that stuff so that you end up paying less in taxes, but we tax you heavily coming out of the gate. And most small business owners seem to think we're talking about them when we're not. We're talking about the businesses that have 50, 60, 100, 1,000 employees who are making millions of dollars a year. And if we were taxing them, they would have to cut that by actually paying the number one, because everybody's number one expense is their employees. They would have to put even more of that money into their employees to get it out of their tax base. And once it was in their employees' pocket, their employees are going to have to spend it. They're going to save some of it, but they're going to start eating out. They're going to start buying cars. They're going to start going on vacations. They're going to start paying for their children to go to school. They're going to start buying nicer clothes. And when you own that small business, you are the primary beneficiary of that spending. So your little clothing shop, your little bakery, your little restaurant is going to get more customers. And more customers means more money. And more money for you means you can hire more people, you can expand your business, which means now there's a bunch more employees who are lined up in your business, and maybe you can afford to pay them better as opposed to just increasing the number. That is as close as you get to trickle down. You take it, or you make it so that they have to spend it to keep it, as opposed to what we have now, which is we give them tax cuts out the wazoo and they offshore that money to the tune of trillions of dollars sitting in offshore banks that they're not doing anything with it. It doesn't hurt them to have it. It doesn't hurt them to spend it. It's just extra money that's been taken out of circulation.
Well, you can buy your own social media company, or, I guess have a bigger boat. I don't know, but let's go back to this unity in the country. So, one of the things that I think that MAGA is upset about is, in this, I assume is primarily white people, but it's also Hispanic, Asian, and some black folks, is all these jobs, the blue collar jobs that were very, the people were making $40, $70, $80 an hour all of them went overseas. And the textile mills went out of the South. A lot of the car parts are made other places. And this did impact many, many small towns in the Midwest and the South, particularly, and devastated them. And how do we meet that economic populism? If populism is the solution, which I'm thinking it is, how do we deal with the loss of those kind of jobs? Because my sense is most of those people don't want to get retrained. They don't want to go. They don't want to. But I suspect many of them are working in solar energy and wind farms and chip factories, and that is kind of happening. But there's this sense that the globalization and then there's a lot of truth to it. The globalization sent money to the rich. It didn't send, and maybe to some upper middle class folks. I mean, a lot of people skated by during that time without being affected. But a lot of people just lost their jobs and lost their businesses. And we were going to, supposedly, when we embraced globalization, we were going to fix that. We didn't. I don't know if it's fixable exactly. But is there some way populism could solve that problem too? I mean, is there some way that economic opportunity for everybody, I want to say even MAGA, for economic opportunity for everybody would solve a lot of the unity problems in the country, a lot of the polarization? Is there, and I thought the Democrats were kind of doing that. They were creating all these jobs in southern states, but that didn't seem to solve the problem. It didn't seem to.
Okay, so that's actually an angle I hadn't considered, and that's a really interesting point. And I think the flaw is in the fact that we are, even when things, even a year ago, when things were financially better than the decline we're starting to see now. Actually, that would have just been 8 months ago, 10 months ago, before Trump took office. We are dealing with a system that is still lying to people and pointing fingers and giving them reasons to, illogical reasons, lies, to think that someone is trying to take what's theirs and devolve their quality of life as Americans, when what we're really seeing is that, as you said, the people at the top are just taking more and more and more, and they're blaming it on other people. And a big chunk of our country, a solid third really, are buying that lie hook, line, and sinker. I can't even begin to imagine. Well, no, we can begin to imagine. And we've created a generation of people who are more than happy to buy into these lies, because we had a generation before that who were told your racism, your homophobia, your nationalism is less than acceptable, and it would be best if you stayed quiet about that sort of stuff. And then we stripped away the education that allowed the rest of society to understand why those people needed to keep quiet, why the things they believed were illogical or just untrue. They had been lied to and they had swallowed that lie. We stripped away the ability to think, to look at the facts and place them. And while we were busy doing that, we moved away from a government that fought with itself, but understood the entire point was to come to an accord, which generally meant nobody got what they wanted, but everybody got something. And that ended with Reagan. I can honestly remember civics classes where we talked about debates that the Republicans and the Democrats were having about various different issues. And we got to see the people who led our government arguing with each other and finding middle ground and being civil about it. It wasn't like it is. Back then it wasn't like it is now. You 100% disagreed with the other side, but you understood you had to give them something. Even if they were somewhat of a minority, you had to give them something in order to bring the entire package together. And you didn't get what you wanted necessarily, and they definitely didn't get what they wanted, but everybody moved forward a little bit. And we don't do that anymore. We just try to find ways to bury the other side, particularly from the conservative edge, which is, it is a culture war. And now that the government is involved in it, we went for a long time where it was like, the people can fight, but the government has a job. And now we have, to speak to what we're here for. We have a government that is passing rules that are designed to push black male soldiers out of the military over hygiene rules that we've understood for 40 years were necessary.
Can you talk more about that? So what that was specifically? What goes on?
Okay, so it's a shaving profile. It basically says that all soldiers should be clean shaven. And for I think the number is like, it's somewhere between 20 and 40% of black soldiers. It's a high number, but I can't remember what it is. Daily shaving is a problem. It's not just black soldiers, but it is mostly black soldiers. we get razor bumps. There's a medical name for it, but it basically comes from when you shave, the hairs, rather than growing out of your skin, will curl back on themselves because we have kinky hair. They'll curl back on themselves and they create infections. And I have the same issue. I don't know how well the camera shows it. I have this issue. Most of the men in my family have this issue. The men in my family who have been in the military have needed that profile so that they did not have to shave every day. And the end result of that is that they have to. I don't think in my dad's generation they waxed their faces. That's what I do. But my dad and my uncles had to pluck. They had to get needles and tweezers and dig the hairs out from under the skin so that they were on the outside, and then pluck them completely, uh, uh, and wait for them to grow back in again, and then do it all over again. And depending on how much your face was involved, you would have to spend more time. In my case, it's mostly on my neck. My dad had that issue down his cheeks and on his neck. I think only one of my uncles didn't have that problem, but that is a lot of black soldiers. They cannot shave every day because it will create an ongoing and worsening infection from those hairs and from
Oh,
having cut through the skin to get down to the hair, or from every time you're trying to run the razor over extremely uneven skin and you're tearing it open and you're bleeding and you're having to care for those injuries and they're getting infected. They're not healing flat. Um, yeah, it's just an ongoing, and it is a literal natural problem, and it is nobody's fault. It's just the way it is. So by taking away that shaving profile, you are pushing those soldiers out of the military. You can't, if you have that problem, you can't be a U.S. soldier. So yeah, so Hegseth is trying to push out black soldiers with that, because it serves no other purpose. It serves no other purpose. Um, but at the same time, we're making rules. We're still arguing about them trying to push into the National Defense Authorization. They're trying to push in things like, uh, soldiers who have children who are trans or have gender issues, that their care won't be paid for by our government's uh, benefits that they already receive. Uh, and that's their children. That we're not talking about the soldiers themselves. That's their children. And we already know we're not going to be paying for the soldiers, because if you identify yourself as a transgender soldier, you're out of the military. So it's not covering you either. Um, where they're putting a ban on transgender bathrooms. So, I mean, I suppose you could still have, male, female, and family, but they'd find a way to complain about that too. You're not allowed to have pride flags in military settings. If the DoD is in charge of it, you can't have a pride flag, um, which is a very specific attack. Um, there are all
and
kinds
all
of
the,
political and
yeah.
social standards that we use. Go ahead.
Well, so if we're trying to promote unity, for instance, in the military, you've got to have unity. Um, how do we get unity in the military? How do we do that? It seems like what we were trying to do was to make a reasonable place for everybody. Everybody that could meet standards such as, physical fitness, or the ability to do basic math and arithmetic, or basic math and reading, and um, the basics of academics. We have a test for that. Yeah, it just seems so easy to go, well, and MAGA's got to stop trying to disunify us. It's like, it's just so easy to, I mean, the Army's got a whole program, I read this the other day, that of helping people that don't quite meet the standard. They get 90 days and to try to do that. The military actually works
Right.
with them.
Right.
Yeah, helps them pass the test and get in, and it's an incredibly inspirational story. I mean, and it's what we've always done is people. The military is a great place for opportunity. an opportunity to equalize the system a little bit, to make things a little more fair. You can, if you're having trouble with school, maybe the Army will help you learn to read, to read a little bit better, or to be more motivated, or whatever. So you can join the system, be part of it. But if the system is stacked against you, constantly stacked against you, it just increases inequality. I mean, what do you think, Mitch, about this idea of what Schenk is saying, that if we really address economic fairness, not by everybody getting the same equal income, but by taking all the barriers out in the tax system for favoring the wealthy, is that going to help the unity of the country?
I don't think it's okay. So that is a necessary step, but I don't think it is the primary necessary step. If we created a situation, Cynthia Leonard, who was in one of our early episodes, she's a big fan of basic income. The idea that everybody should be given a living wage. If you need more, it's on you to go out and get it. So if depending on, the number would have to change depending on where you lived in the country, because you couldn't just say everybody gets $2,000, because $2,000 in Arkansas is a completely different ballgame than $2,000 in California, or $2,000 in New York, or $2,000 in Georgia, or $2,000 in Mississippi. Bless you. So we need a basic, to do what he's talking about. You need to have basic income. You need to know that no one is so poor that they cannot find a place to live. I'm not talking about whether or not you have a drug addiction issue and you choose to be out in the street, or your brain is so fried at this point that you can't put enough logic together to move into a home. And we're not talking about mental illness where you cannot be near people, or the responsibility of a home is troublesome, or if we put you in housing, you're going to start destroying it because of the issues that come with your mental illness. But if you could put together a situation where you're giving people basic income to meet their needs with, then it is just a hop, skip, and a jump and here is medical care for everybody. And that medical care is going to include mental health care. And then it becomes a very simple step to creating education that is tailored to the needs of the individual and society, so that people who, if you need a greater education, it's available. And if you decide you don't want to go to school anymore, there's something you could do. And because of the nature of a basic income, if you decide you don't want to work at all, then that's fine. You don't have to have a job, but you'll have to make do with what you're given, because there's no more. So he's got to, he's on the right path there. For me, the biggest piece of that is we have to get back to a place where we understand that everyone's rights are the same as everyone else's rights. The fact that we literally have politics predicated on this person or that person is less deserving of the benefits of this society than I am, even though they're a member of this society, is insane to me. And you would think, almost 200 years after the Civil War, well, not 100, 150 years after the Civil War, a little, give or take, you'd think we would be able to see that and balance it out, but we are still fighting the battle of, I need to be better than somebody. And I still feel
American thing.
What?
That desire to be better than someone else is a very American thing.
That's an unfortunate thought. But yeah,
it does. Because well, I think it's a natural part of the human ego, going to psychology, that what am I having a little trouble here? I got a big thing in front of my screen. Yeah, it's part of the ego's view of the world, which is I can feel better if somebody else is below me. You know, they're somehow they're of lesser sexuality, they're of lesser color. But the big one is they have lesser money. That is the huge one in American culture. We just, because I could just hear my own inner bells going off. Oh my God. Mitch is talking about a universal income, a base income for people. That's wrong. It's socialism. It's blah, 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 blah. It'll take away incentive to work, and it probably would take away incentive to work at the lettuce field. You know, I mean, you may not want to go pick lettuces all day or pick cotton, for instance, or harvest rice, but the machines are doing all that. Machines are doing increasingly more of that. I remember when these little tomatoes kept showing up in the store, these cheap little tomatoes. I go, what? And they were hard as rocks, and they were MH1s, machine harvestable tomatoes, the first iteration of that. And so all those low-paying jobs, picking tomatoes, which no American wants, went to machines. Pretty soon AI is going to take over even more jobs. You know, it's a very, it makes universal income make a lot more sense, you know? And then the problem will be, what will people do with their spare time?
Okay, so, and I was having that argument just a few days ago. It was actually part of the Star Trek, Star Wars, who is better, Star Trek, or Star Wars? It was part of that argument. And the idea that if you gave everybody a universal income, the vast majority of people are not just going to go back to their house, sit down in front of the computer, and never move again. The vast majority of people freed from a requirement to be at a job 40 hours a week will probably be at a job 60 hours a week, but they're going to be doing something they want to do as opposed to doing something they were forced to do. There are a ton of people who would like to be in a garden right now, who would like to be in a field, who would like to be in the forest cleaning it up, who would like to be tending to nearby herds, who would like to be helping out the animals at the shelter. There are plenty of tasks they could put their energy toward. They could go back to school and get higher degrees to be even more able to do what they do. And there's always going to be stuff that can't be done by the machine. You know, as you said, those tomatoes were rock hard. We could go back to a higher quality of tomato that had to be picked by hand and simply pay those people a logical wage to go out in those fields and work those hard hours. Which isn't, and that's to say, you know, it becomes a skilled job to be in the fields picking those fruits. And the longer you're out there doing it, the more money you're making. And then that balances out against the people who went to school for a higher education, who are doing more complex work or a different kind of complex work, and they're being paid a higher wage. Everybody's work is always going to have some balance of value. And if the thing you want to do all day long doesn't have any particular value to anybody but you, then that's fine. You're still not going to starve to death. And by that standard, we're not going to have to worry about arresting you or dealing with your illnesses that you can't afford to pay for, or the fact that you don't have decent food or medical care, and we spend even more money on your emergent issues because we don't get to deal with them until they're chronic and they're dang near killing you. And we're not going to have to drag you off the street because you don't have any place else to go. It was different 300 years ago when most of this area was just covered with trees and everybody lived in their own separate little tribe. Because even then, you weren't just laying around with nothing to do. You had things to do for yourself and for your community. We are now industrialized, and we can afford to take care of even more people. And oddly, that circle is exactly what I've been describing. And then it circles back around to a community where everybody's individual best interest and ability can be harnessed by the community. But this wasn't intended to be about
We're
universal
talking about
income.
unity again. We're talking
Right.
about unity, and how can we be unified when one group of people feels left out entirely and abandoned? They can't even afford to go to the hospital.
Right.
Or
Right. And the answer to
another group of people that feel like they used to be privileged and now they've lost their privilege. Um, the people who need to look down on other people, that need someone to be lesser than they are so that they'll feel better about themselves. Um, all of that, no, that's interesting. So good, let's go to the example of Mamdani
yeah,
and
in New York, yes.
Osborne, Mamdani in New York, who is a democratic socialist, and and Dan Osborne, who is, what is he? He's running for the Senate in Nebraska, and
Okay.
he's sort of an economic populist. I don't think he would call well, he couldn't call himself a socialist in Nebraska. He would be stoned. Something very biblical would happen. But he is a populist. He talks about the incredible economic divide. And then we have Mamdani, who took the risk of suggesting of being a slumlord myself, or at least having renting out a house on a hill somewhere, which is what I do. Um, they took the risk of and I'm not even sure what his proposal is, specific, but to make it possible for all young people to have housing in New York and on their incomes, not based on what the landlord wanted that day, you know? And so, he's being pilloried, because it goes fundamentally against American capitalism. It's
Well,
like,
okay. So the problem with Osborne isn't that he's against capitalism. It's that he still has that issue of he needs somebody to blame for the problem. And even though he's saying it's the rich guys that are messing us up, he still turns around and says we need that wall built. Illegal immigrants are, why are we giving them benefits and treating them like, human beings who need some level of decency applied to them? He's still in that box. He's still effectively a Trumper. And in the same way that there was in the article that you were talking about, there was a point where he was talking about if Mr. Trump needs someone to help him build that wall, I'm a real handy guy. Okay,
yeah, I saw.
that's fantastic, but you are agreeing to support a guy who is denying swaths of Americans their basic civil rights, who is denying constitutional rights, human rights to anyone who is brown enough that he can detect a difference. Then that falls in the category of that's the reason he doesn't have a tan. That's the reason he's orange. He doesn't want to be brown. He doesn't want to be seen as having spent a healthy amount of time in the sun. He has to be, he can't be the pale basement dwelling creature that he is, but he can't be something else. He's settled on orange because it doesn't make him look like anything else. He's in his little box, and Osborne is joining him there in terms of we cannot treat everyone equally, and that is again that is the root of the evil. Too many of us do not look at other people and see other human beings. They look at other people and see a problem. Well, we have to get to a point where
let me make an argument supporting Dan Osborne here, if I can.
okay.
And I don't really know him that well. Okay.
Okay.
But let me assume that what he meant was to build that wall was some kind of rhetorical nod to, like, for instance, it might be kind of a unifying position. Yes, we're going to, and this has been tried before, by the way, and doesn't work, but I'll say it again, that we want only legal immigration in America. We make sure our borders are secure enough to ensure that. And we make legal immigration rational and relatively easy for people that are not criminals, or we just have a federal bureaucracy that actually works for immigration, which it doesn't right now. It doesn't, like, okay, you're applying for asylum, you apply. And within 6 months, you actually get an answer, or even 3 months. Why couldn't we get an answer in 3 months? If you want to bring your family to America when you're a citizen, why can't we do that in 3 months? Not 10 years. If we need farm workers, why don't we have a program where, and this is stuff I think the majority of Americans would agree on, that we have as many farm workers as we need. And it's a temporary program that maybe has a way towards citizenship eventually, where you can stay. If you come and you work 5 years and you don't break the law, maybe you have a way to apply for American citizenship, and you actually hear about it in 3 months. Whether it's rejected or accepted. And we have a policy that we want immigrants, because I believe, speaking for the vast majority of American does want immigration and does want immigrants. It's just, why can't we do it under a lawful system that actually controls the flow and actually meets the needs of everybody involved? Immigrants, well, when I brought my husband to this country, we had a lawful marriage. Well, he has the right to citizenship under that, or at least a right to a green card under that system. 1 year it took us. 1 year after applying. 700 pages of immigration, and resubmitting the same documents 4 times sometimes. Just because our immigration system is so dysfunctional and so broken. It doesn't have to be. People really wanted to fix it. But I believe there's a way to unify the country. I'm now running for office. There's a way to unify the country under a rational immigration policy that includes a way to amnesty and to citizenship for those who are already here. I mean, it's
Okay.
very close to it at one time.
Okay, yeah, but we already had that system. That's the system we're dismantling right now. If we
Yeah,
really,
we are we didn't know. We didn't have that system yet. No, that never got that far.
well,
It never functioned.
okay, and the main reason it didn't function is because we had a high influx of people and a low number of people to process all that paperwork. We've always had a problem with the number of judges who were going to work people through the system, and we've made that problem worse now. The fact that we're arresting people at their citizenship hearings, at their green card hearings, at their visa hearings, that's
Crazy.
yeah, it's just underlining that the entire goal is to get these people out, even though we have no rational replacement for the functions that they provide. And it has always been true that if we literally wanted to stop illegal immigration, all we have to do is turn off the spigot of jobs. And the easiest way to turn off the spigot of jobs is that when you go to the chicken plant and you find 50 illegal workers, you find the company that hired them. They will fucking stop hiring illegal aliens if there is a penalty that they have to pay. The company that hired all those illegal aliens, when those 50 get put on a bus and shipped away, they're going to hire 50 more to replace them. They might actually hire more than 50, because now they got to make up for a shortfall in the production caused by the loss of those last 50 employees. It's always been a monetary issue, and it's always going to be a monetary issue until we take that factor out of it and level that part of the playing field. The people with the money want the labor, they want the labor cheap, and we allow them to get away with that, with making that labor cheap. If we force, and again, that's what I was saying before, if we force them, your tax rate is now 80%. The only way to get that down is to improve your facilities, improve your product, and improve and take out what you're paying to your employees. The first thing that would happen is that everybody would get a raise and everybody would get better benefits.
Do you think that would solve? So if we didn't, okay, so my view of this is that many years ago, in California anyway, Republican businessmen made a deal with Democratic politicians and regular people, which is will allow very lax enforcement of immigration laws in exchange for these people working at jobs. I mean, we made that deal, and then the deal became, when Trump arrived, that deal went away. It's no longer a deal. It became, well, maybe we would like those jobs, but we don't want none of them brown people here taking the jobs from Americans. So, well, a good question, Mitch. Do you think if you, let's say you increased the salary to $35 an hour in the lettuce field, would we find Americans that would do that? And then not have immigration? I mean, I think that causes all kinds of other problems, but like, who's going to take care of all the old people?
I think you would, and I think you would for the same reason that we still have people working in mines. We still have people working in the oil fields. Those guys are well paid for the risks they take.
That's a good point.
And let's be clear, those are incredibly risky jobs. Those are dangerous jobs. The work itself is a detriment to your health. And you may manage to take care of your family very well, but there are very strong odds that you're going to do permanent damage to your body that is only going to worsen as you age, assuming you don't die in some sort of a horrific industrial accident. If you increase the pay, you will find Americans willing to take up that slack.
Interesting. Okay, that's a good point. So maybe we need to pay our lettuce pickers $35 an hour, $40 an hour, and let our food prices go up, and let that be okay. I mean,
and you're assuming that the food prices would go up.
Yeah.
So we have this never-ending and ongoing issue of, we have lots of farmland in this country that goes unused. We sell huge amounts of our produce outside the country. If you just focus that in, if you so much of your crop has to be, or not so much of your crop individually, but so much of our crop as a nation has to be maintained domestically to meet our needs. Everything in excess of that, we don't care what you do with it. We're not going to pay you to not plant. We're not going to pay you to plant it and then burrow it under. We're going to pay you, as a matter of fact, we're not going to need to pay you, because if you are utilizing your land, there is a market for it. And if there's not a market, you shouldn't be farming. So that would be
capitalism right there.
Yeah. We have a system running right now where we just put a lot of money into making things not happen. And there's got to be logical reasons for that. And I think the problem is that the reason was logical once upon a time, and it just no longer is, but we still have the same rules. And we have the same rules because somebody's making entirely too much money off of the rule being there. That one farmer who is making $30 million a year because he owns 40 different farms, has a bunch of people working under him, he can afford to peel off 5 million of that and pay it to lobbyists and make sure, the governor is getting greased and the senator from his area and the representative from his area are getting their share. And their job is to make sure that the rules that give him all that money stay in place so that they get their cut of all that money. That part of the system, we gotta find a way to burn that out. If you are working in government, that is a temporary and not particularly well-paying job, and you definitely won't be using. We need to just make lobbying illegal. It's just legalized bribery. We need to cut it out 100%. Lobbying needs to end, and a lot of things would improve if we stopped lobbying. And then we have to deal with the insider trading and the everybody's committee is investing in the field in which they specifically have to set legislation in place. That's no.
And all of that makes it harder for there to be a level playing field. So me talking to my representative isn't going to matter nearly as much as the lobbyist for the National Association of Slumlords. They're going to listen a lot more to that lobbyist because she has more money, and I guess that feeds into the narrative how inequality grows. Money concentrates in a few hands, and it becomes used to increase power leverage. What do they call it? The mother's milk of politics is money, And as soon as remember Citizens United, that little lawsuit, that now the Supreme Court has decided that corporations are speech. They have their own free speech, and that they're allowed to spend as much money as they want on politics because that's their free speech.
And it's the stupidest damn thing I've ever fucking heard. Corporations do not vote, and corporations are not people. I can't send a corporation to prison. They are not a thinking, living entity with the same, deserving of the same political access that I have as a human being. Even me, my one vote, they are not my equal. A whole corporation is not my equal and should not be. Everyone in that corporation already has a say.
Yeah, and the vast majority of us just are cowed by corporations and everything they can do, and AI is going to make it even more. What would be the message to America that might unify the vast majority of Americans here? We've got a few minutes left. What could be a message that would unify us, maybe get 65% of us on board and not drive the other, not make it such a 50-50 sort of proposition now. What is our message? Okay. What would be our message to?
Okay, and here's a problem for me. You can't come up with the message and the slogan because the message and the slogan don't fix the problem. The problem isn't that there is a lack of a message. The problem is that we acknowledge that we need Title IX to protect people from sexual abuse, from sexism, from bullying for those exact same reasons, but we somehow cannot get the Women's Rights Act ratified and recognize that women are the equal of every woman is the equal of every man. We are constantly drawing lines that make somebody less than. And this is where I started this. Until we start drawing lines that say everyone's rights are at this line. This is the line. There's nobody down here. If you have a heartbeat, a brain, this is where your line is. This is not, it's not down here, it's not down here, it's not down here. Everyone's line, exactly the same. If I have autonomy in my body, you have autonomy in your body. If I can vote, you can vote. And there's a difference between saying I can vote because I'm a citizen and you can't vote because you're not a citizen. But there is that is not the same difference as I live 2 miles west of the train tracks and you live 2 miles east of the train tracks. Nobody west of the train tracks is a decent human being and deserves to be able to have their say. The things that they want or the things that stupid people want, we're going to leave all the voting to the people on the other side of the tracks. We need to that needs to be done away with.
So our campaign message is, it's got to be just not talk and not saying just equality for all, not equality of speech, equality of power within the culture. It's got to be policies that actually make that happen.
Well, I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that being the policy, because you have to say what you want to get the people on your side. I'm just saying there's nobody out there delivering that message. There is nobody in the Republican or Democratic Party whose message is 100% equality, human rights for all humans, period, end of statement.
Do you see a politician that is doing that now?
Oh yeah. AOC, Buttigieg. Cannot think of his name, but there's that other young man from Texas who's part of their legislature. Very rational, very straightforward.
Tallarico, white guy?
Yeah, white guy.
Tallarico?
He looks a lot like Colin.
Yost.
Yeah, he looks a lot like Colin Yost. Colin Yost. His name, he can pronounce it. Him and his lovely wife. There are plenty of people who espouse that standard, but they're not in control, and they are being kept out of control. We have shoved them as far from the table as we can keep them without killing them.
Okay, so now is the time. Who's your presidential candidate going to be then? Who can you pick among this bunch that will carry this message of equality?
I would still vote for Bernie. I would still vote for Buttigieg. I would still vote for AOC.
Tallarico?
There are a lot of those people that should be in the White House, in the cabinet, in the government at a federal level, looking out for everyone. I mean, they did a great job when they were just looking out for their region. They're doing even better when they're looking out for the country. I don't know Tallarico. I don't know his political affiliation, but I'm not saying most of that list is effectively Democrats. There are plenty of people out there who are Republicans who understand what I just said and believe in what I just said. I don't know them because I don't know them.
Well, they're afraid of getting their heads chopped off by the Queen if they speak out,
Yeah, I don't know why I don't know them. I don't know why they're not speaking out. I don't know why they haven't been able to get elevated. I assume it is the party not wanting that message out, so they cannot advance within that party. Because there are still people, there's a reason that Cortez doesn't move forward, that Bernie is constantly being held back. Bernie came up in a different age. He has attained a great deal of power. But if he were starting today with those same beliefs, he would be in the exact same toilet as Cortez.
Yeah, he was. I remember when he started. He was an independent from Vermont, and he was a socialist, and I don't think he even caucused with the Democrats then. I don't know. He was he was just a very eloquent speaker on public broadcasting and other. Where did I hear him? I just would hear him around and go, God, he makes so much sense. He's such a reasonable person, and it was very. Oh, he was on KPFK, our radical left radio station then, and but he was kind of put in that category. Now he has joined the mainstream. Mamdani,
Connie, yes.
has joined the main conversation. AOC has joined the main conversation. She's done the work to get involved in the system and let her voice be known. Well, I'm of eternal hope. To see someone like with the charisma of Obama come along again. I'm looking for it. I'm ready for it. I'm going to vote for it. In the meantime, we're out of time, and we thank you for watching us, listening to us. Please leave your comments below. You don't have to agree with us. We just like that you listen and talk and share your point of view. Even if you radically disagree, we want to hear from you. Please subscribe. Watch our movie, Love and Country. It's on Tubi and Amazon. If you want to read the backstory of all the characters in that, get the novel Love and Country, which I wrote. Mitch was big on making that movie Love and Country too. You can see him as the first sergeant. Man, what a great acting job he did on that. Go see him. You gotta see him. Okay, really, you gotta.
I'm editing all that.
Time. What?
I'm editing all that out.
No, you're not. Bitch. You don't dare do that. You will accept a plug. Take it. Take it like a man. You can do it.